Okay, so I just was catching up on Piazza. Oh, that was 17 hours ago too. I just checked. So I honestly did not realize that July 4th was actually listed as a holiday on the university website. I just responded to the Piazza post, but I'll repeat it here as well. I was just complaining for like the past week that UB doesn't observe any holidays except like just a couple of semi random ones, and it's just because I wasn't paying attention. I That was definitely my mistake. Honestly, I don't know how. If I did realize that, I don't know how I would have fit the whole schedule into 11 lectures. Anyway, like you would have had to have this quiz last Thursday, so you ended up with some extra time. But since I shouldn't be forcing anybody to, and I know this is a little late. I'm sorry. Since I shouldn't be forcing anybody to do anything on the holiday, uh, you'll be able to earn the. My response to that is you'll be able to earn the application objectives for classes 3 and data structures 3 either today if you got it today or if you complete them on the final exam. So if somebody said, screw Jesse, I'm not doing anything on the 4th, that'd be perfectly fine. You can still earn all the application objectives even if you said, no, I'm observing the holiday. My personal response to it was, oh shit, I have to work on the 4th. That sucks, but it's during the day. I'm going to celebrate the 4th at night. So I wasn't too bothered by it, but if anybody else made plans and said, I'm partying all day, I'd be fine with that. I ain't going to tell you can't do that, especially since it is a recognized holiday. So that was definitely my fuck up. I'm sorry about that. I kind of wish I wasn't lecturing today. I wish I did notice that, but I just don't know where that quiz would have went in the schedule. So I'm not sure exactly how that would have worked. And happy 4th of July, everyone. Yes. Dropped a triple double on those quizzes. Nice. Crush those things. I'm hoping everybody's doing good on those quizzes. You don't want to go into the final exam needing, hopefully nobody needs 6 quizzes, all 6 quizzes going into it. Quiz logistics. Let's talk about that a little bit. This is definitely a busy week for all of us, especially, well, I don't know, I can't even say that. I was going to say especially for Gurleen and myself, but I think y'all might be busier than us because you have the tasks to complete as well and the final exam and everything. But for grading, the grading side, so the quiz classes 3, data structures 3 is over. Our goal is to get a 24-hour turnaround on the grades, so grades should be posted in 24 hours. Hopefully a little earlier than that. Tomorrow morning, Eastern Standard Time. Gurleen's going to be grading all day today, and then she's in a different time zone, so I don't know if she's grading at night or morning. I still haven't got my bearings on that one. But when I wake up tomorrow morning, I'm gonna clean up anything, any last minute processing that needs to be done with the grades. Look over things and then post them to Autolab. So you should see your grades tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, I lost my sentence. Tomorrow morning, Eastern Standard Time. That's what I was saying. I want to keep reminding the time zone. I think you all know that whenever I say a time for the course, it's going to be the time zone that UB is physically in. But just to make sure, tomorrow morning, Eastern Standard Time. So it's important for us to get those quiz grades out quickly because, of course, you have the final exam. You have to know which quizzes you even need to study for. You don't want to invest some time studying for quizzes 5 and 6. I call them 5 and 6 internally, but classes 3 and data structures 3, you don't want to invest time studying those if you already have credit. So you'll have at least 24 hours before the final exam when you get your grades. You'll have more than 24 hours to be able to say, oh shit, I didn't get classes 3, but I got data structures 3. Okay, so I better study up my polymorphism. And I think you all understand why that's reasonable. I don't have to keep going on with this explanation. On the did graphs. We're doing tests and tips today. I'll do for today's lecture. I'll do. I have like kind of my plan, what I want to do, what I'll do by default. But more so than anything, I'd like to take your questions. Anything, especially those of you who are here live, who who are attending lecture live still, any questions that you have, anything you're tripped up with on the homework, especially if several of you have the same question, I'd really like to focus our time on that and help you get that last push to get you through those last programming tasks, to get you finishing up with the exam. There are some common. I thought about this for a moment. There are some common mistakes that I'm seeing, like Piazza's littered with the same questions over and over and over. Office hours, likewise. My speculation is that those of you who are showing up to lecture don't have those questions. So I was thinking of investing time in those, but I think everybody who's here live would be pretty bored by that, to be honest. There's a lot of not doing null checks in linked lists and getting null pointer exceptions in Autolab. I've been seeing that way too often. And to be blunt about that, if you're seeing that error, you either don't understand linked lists or you don't understand how the testing works. And I can help you in office hours when somebody has those questions. I explain those two things, but you're missing something in your understanding. So when it's a common question, I always think, well, if it's a lot of people have the question, that's my fault. But I don't know. With that one, I'm not so sure. I don't know. I have my doubts. I don't know what else I could do during lecture to explain that one. Okay, the final exam. That's why I came to the schedule. So that's what we're doing today. So if you have questions, start getting your questions in chat if you have them. Otherwise, I'm just going to do a bunch of debugging stuff. For the final exam in 2 days, you're going to have all your quiz grades tomorrow morning. And then for the final exam, it'll work with the same structure as a quiz. I'm going to, at 11 a.m. on... I did update this. On Thursday. On 11 a.m. on Thursday, I'm going to send out an email with all 6 quizzes. So this is your second chance to get all 6 of the quizzes. You're only going to take the quizzes that you need. So, for example, if you have credit for Classes 1, Classes 2, and Data Structures 2, you're going to get the links for all 6 quizzes, but you're only going to do Classes 3, Data Structures 1, and Data Structures 3. So you're only doing the ones that you need. There's no need to redo one that you already have credit for, unless, if you want the extra practice, whatever, I shouldn't say it like that. If you want the extra practice, I strongly encourage that, by the way. It's another chance for you to get a round of feedback from the TA. If maybe you got a 3 the first chance, you want to see if you've learned what you're supposed to be learning and get the 4, I'd be happy to give you the feedback and go through the grading process and do all that. The only reason I say it so lightly is because nobody ever does that, unfortunately. Everybody wants sample quizzes and solutions and stuff, but when it comes time to doing extra work to get more feedback, no one does. And I can't blame you. I don't think I would either. But so that's what's going on with that. At 11 a.m., the submission due time is going to be 2 p.m. So exactly 3 hours after I send the email. You're going to, that's going to be your submission deadline. So technically, theoretically, the way I'm going to word it in the email at least is 2:45 is the end of the exam, and then you have that next 15 minutes to submit. But, I know some of you are dipping into that 15 minutes to complete the quizzes. That's fine, I guess. There's no way I can really police that or stop you. But you're doing that at your own risk. There were a few students who were submitting right at the deadline and didn't get their submissions in. I don't believe that you were sitting there for 15 full minutes trying to work on your upload. I think you were dipping into that 15 minutes. You did so at your own risk. So for the final exam officially ends at 2:45. If you want to, at your own risk, take more time, which has been the case for all the quizzes, is at your own risk. But if you start submitting at 2:45, getting your images ready, I think you'll have plenty of time. So that's the final exam. Then we're going to have a 24-hour, which this one I want to get a lot faster turnaround, but at the very worst of a 24-hour turnaround for the final exam as well. Gerline and myself are both going to do a lot of grading. I'm going to start grading right after the final exam. I have office hours right after the exam. Or after office hours, after the exam. I'm going to start grading and just try to get it done. once everything's done, I like to get final grades out as soon as I can so I can actually start my summer too. I want to start my summer since I'm giving up half of it for this course. So I want to get final grades out. But more importantly than that is the makeup quizzes. This is the last lecture, so I got to talk about all the logistics and get all the reminders out there. But if you complete at least 4 of the quizzes after the final exam. So you had your first chance through all 6 quizzes, you had your second chance through all 6 quizzes, and combining both of those chances, you have at least 4 quizzes completed. You do get one last chance, a third chance to complete those last 1 or 2 quizzes that you still need. If after the first 2 chances you don't even have 3 of the quizzes done, unfortunately that is an F in the course. You had 2 chances at each of the quizzes. If you still can only get half of those or less than half of them, unfortunately you do just have to take 116 again. But if you do have 4 or more, I do offer that extra last chance for 2 quizzes. And I want to get those scheduled as soon as we can. Ideally, I want to get those scheduled on Friday. If we have to schedule some of them on Saturday, I'm realizing that's probably going to be a possibility. But we're not going to drag that on to like next week and stuff. So if you are in that situation, I'm going to send you an email as soon as final exam grades come out, which might be on Thursday. I do want to get that grading done quick. That I'll send you an email about scheduling, and I'll see how many students are in the situation and everything, and we'll try to get everything scheduled on Friday to do the makeup chances. And I'll be in communication with you if you're in that situation. Of course, the ideal situation, if you have any quizzes that you need to complete, crush that final, man. Crush that final. Don't have to worry about the makeup chances and scheduling stuff. Just crush this final. The structure is going to be the same as the quizzes. It's literally going to look like 6 of the quizzes, and I won't even change them all that much. It's going to be the same, testing the same concepts. The quizzes are going to have the same structure. If you study your old quizzes, your first 2 chances, figure out what you did wrong on those, run the debugger on that code. Well, I guess you can't quite do that, but you can really see what that final exam is going to look like. It's going to look like your first 2 attempts, but slightly different. There's no surprises. I'm not going to throw something at you that you've never seen before throughout the semester. It's going to look like the first 2 quizzes that you took, and I just want to know, hey, look, you tried this 2 times, you didn't quite get it. Here's basically the same thing for a 3rd time. Did you study the things that you didn't understand the first 2 times? That's what I'm doing with the final exam. All right. And then, of course, the task actual deadlines Friday at midnight. And then after that, it's wrapping up the course. Like, you'll know what your grades are, whether you passed or not at that point. I'm going to have, actually, let me update Piazza right now. Sorry, just bear with me 1 second. I forgot to do this before lecture, but I'll narrate what I'm doing here. So on Friday, I told you I was going to have like a mini office hour marathon. That's going to be on Friday, this Friday, 11 a.m. Let me make sure I get this right. 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. So my normal hours where I'd start lecture at 11 and end office hours at 3. So my normal live interactive working hours, if you can call it that. I don't know what else to call it. We call them contact hours behind the scenes. But my usual contact hours on a Tuesday or Thursday, I'm going to have office hours at those times to help you wrap up those tasks. I really don't want to see somebody fail the course because they were struggling with one like really obscure thing. Maybe you can't figure out what my incorrect solution is. The last thing you need on task 8, and you just can't figure that one out for whatever reason. And then the deadline passes and you fail the course, but you got all 6 quizzes, the 7 other tasks. I don't want to see anybody in that situation. So I want that office hour marathon, and depending on how it goes, I may extend that a little bit. We'll see how everything works out in the 4 hours that I'll have already. And if you are in that situation, you're trying to wrap things up, hop in the Zoom meeting. I might do depending how many students are there, how everything's going. I might do office hours a little different. I might hang out in the main main room for the meeting and have it a little bit more social office hours. Just depends what the questions are. And then if somebody has a specific question, hop in a breakout room. I don't know. I'll do office hours a little different that day. But if you are in that situation where you're trying to wrap up the course and you have something just holding you back, something getting in your way, come into those office hours. We'll get you taken care of. If you literally can't make any of those 4 office hours, let me know also. Or make a post on Piazza and try to ask your question that way. But I want to get everyone across the finish line here. We don't want to leave anyone behind who's actually trying. There are some students who just leave themselves behind, and unfortunately there's nothing I can do for those students. But anyone if you're trying to pass this class and you've been putting in your effort and you're close to the finish line, I want to get you across that finish line. I know the grading structure is very harsh for the course, and I do what I can to make it less harsh. The grading structure is harsh because there are a lot of things that I need you to know before you move on in your computer science career. So if you do actually know those things, I want to make sure the grading structure isn't getting in your way also. So if it is that one incorrect solution in AutoLab, but you do understand how graphs work, for example, when you're doing task 8, let me get that thing out of your way. If you show me that you understand graphs, that's what I actually care about. I don't care that you can get every single incorrect solution. I care that you understand how to write unit tests and if you understand the concepts. We have, just looking at some stats, we have 50, that actually ain't so bad. It's still a little scary, but not too bad. But 55 students who have at least the first 5 tasks done. So that's pretty good. Could be worse. 62 students who have at least the first 4 tasks done at this point. And that's around, what was the first number I said? 54 to 62. That is around the percentage of students who typically pass CSE116. If you don't have task 4 done by now, you've probably given up on the course. You probably know that you're just planning to retake it. But anyone with at least task 4 done, there's a little bit of hope. Task 5, if you have task 5 done, the first 5 tasks, there's definitely a good chance that you can finish up the course and close up strong. All right, let me catch up on chat. Kind of ignored chat because I had to get through I had to make sure I hit all the logistical points I wanted to make. Can you go over the testing for polymorphism project 7? Yes, I can do that. Let me read all the chat and kind of get a game plan for today's lecture. So we're shifting into today's lecture, testing tips, answering your questions, helping you get these tasks done in a kind of a group thing instead of in an office hour situation. All right, so testing for task 7, let me kind of put that in my mental queue. If I don't come back to it, if I do forget for whatever reason, just remind me. When will data 3 in classes, that was answered. Can the previous, I did kind of see out of the side of my eye that somebody did answer that one in chat. Can the previous quiz docs be unprivated? Just to go over it again if we didn't get credit. I go back and forth on this throughout the years. Right now I'm on not releasing the old quizzes. The old quizzes are so similar to, I guess you haven't seen a second chance quiz yet, but the old quizzes are so similar to your second chance quizzes. I don't like having them out there in electronic form. It just, to me, invites some nefarious stuff. Plus, whenever I release something electronically, it ends up on Chegg. Inevitably, one of you is going to upload it to Chegg, and that pisses me off. So there's always somebody who ruins it for everyone else. But so if the old quiz is on Chegg, and then students taking the course next semester get the old quiz that looks very similar to the next quiz, it just hurts people from actually learning the course. But if you ever want to see, I always make this offer. I think one student took me up on this semester. But if you do want to see the old quiz, I'd be happy to, in office hours, pull it up, share my screen. We can talk about it, go through it. But I'm not going to release it electronically, which, speaking of, Give me 1 second here. Y'all in your check though. You don't know how much that pisses us all off. Seeing all of our material we worked hard to create just out there for everybody uh, to use for usually nefarious purposes to avoid actually learning. Will you still hold extra homework help on Friday? Yep, covered that. For the quizzes, 11, in case you missed it, 11 to 3. I updated the Piazza post, but 11 to 3 on Friday. I'll be holding extra office hours. For the quizzes, do we have to get a passing grade for all the quizzes to pass the course? Yes. And I just went over that. I think you posted that before I went on my whole tirade about that. But you do need to pass them all. But as long as you get 4, up to at least 4 after the final exam, I'm going to work with you to get you across that finish line. Hopefully we'll be able to schedule a third chance and get you get you there. Can we view our previous quizzes? You can view your memory diagrams. You have access to your memory diagrams. On the same token, that's something you created. You own that memory diagram. And you can go to Autolab and see your old memory diagrams. But the handouts, that's something I created. I own. We could talk about copyright stuff. I once found my entire course. I used to just have everything public, open, whatever. My entire course was copy paste at another university. There's ridiculous things that happen that just it's irritating at best. Yo, what's up, Swatstick? Yeah, I haven't seen you in so long. Gotcha. So you will have a third chance if you have at least this is where the 20-second delay is kind of getting me. But if you have at least 4 of them complete after the final, so after 2 chances of each, and this is in the syllabus, like it's not news, but I do like to remind everybody at the end here. You must pass all 6 quizzes to pass the class. If after both attempts you have not completed all 6, but you'll be given a last chance on up to 2 quizzes. So I worded it a little different, but if you have at least 4 completed, is the implication here. I'll give you a third chance, and those will be scheduled outside of lecture time. Obviously, because we won't have any lecture time left after Thursday. So the logistics of that is a little bit undefined, mostly because I don't know all of your schedules. We'll have to schedule a time, find a time for that to happen. And then when we agree on a time, hopefully we'll find a time that works for most or all students in that situation, and then I can treat it as another quiz and just email all the links at a specific time. But we'll play it by ear. Hopefully, it'll never happen, but ideally nobody's in that situation. You all crush the final, and none of us have to worry about it. I'm not quite that optimistic, but I'm optimistic enough that most of you will crush the final and not have to worry about it. But there will be, I'm guessing at least 5 of you in that situation, and I'll work with you. We'll get you across the line. As long as you do understand the material, I'll get it out of your head and prove that you do understand it. All right. Task 7 testing. Can you go over Task 7 testing? Was the only question I saw as to what should we cover in this lecture. So let's talk about it. So we have this movie ratings. I saw on Piazza there was a post like, how come Jesse didn't give us any data to work with? I definitely did. It's the huge blue link. I made it big because every time, I should keep doing this, but every time I get a question like, where's the data? I make the link a little bit bigger. Maybe I should make it even bigger so you can't miss it. But the data's right here. I already had it downloaded, but yeah, here's the data. So it's movie title, comma. Oh shit! I gotta double check because reviewer ID then rating. So movie title, reviewer ID. So reviewer with the ID of 1 gave Rocky 3 a rating of 2. Apparently they didn't like Rocky 3. But they really liked American Pie. They gave American Pie a 4 and Rocky 3 a 2. I might object, but Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, they didn't like that one either. Kind of interesting reviewer. They like, I don't know. I'm not going to read into it. But that's how the format is. So each line is a single review. To Be or Not to Be was reviewed by reviewer with ID 7 at a rating of 2. So this is the format of our data, and we have this file with bonkers lines of ratings. I forget how many, but a lot. Can I do... I feel like I always look for this feature and it's never here. Just give me line numbers. Is that too much to ask? And it is for WordPad. Jesse, get a real text editor. Yeah, I know. So and so forth. Title, reviewer ID, the rating that reviewer gave it. And I cleaned up this data. This data had like half reviews, so like you could give a movie a 3.5. I washed all the data so it fits into our homework. I think they could give zeros as well. So all the ratings are valid ratings. The ratings outside of the 1 to 5 range, we did that when we created the rating class in the reviewer class for the, was it task 2, I believe? But after that, all the ratings that we're working with and the data we're working with will be valid ratings. And you should stick to that in your testing. Give your code data with valid ratings. You don't have to check the invalid ratings at this stage of the game, at this stage of the homework. Maybe I'll add that someday, but I kind of don't want to deal with all the questions like, what is this incorrect solution that says doesn't handle invalid ratings? Because that would be 100 extra Piazza questions. I don't really feel like going through that because it's not really related to what you're learning in this homework. So I don't really want to go through that. This one's the polymorphism homework. So I want to make sure what you're actually doing is at least somewhat related to polymorphism. All right, so that's the data. So the testing, you're going to test this read movie ratings file. Notepad++. I should. I just haven't set up a text editor on this machine. If I'm doing anything, I'm in IntelliJ where I have line numbers. It's not often that I'm just opening a text file like that. I could have just opened the text file in IntelliJ, I guess. I don't think I have. Do I? Maybe I do. Open with. No, I'd never really downloaded a real text editor on this machine. This is my streaming machine. I don't have much installed on it. I have all kinds of text editors on my laptop, my working machine. All right, so read movie ratings. This is similar to the first two like read methods that you wrote, the ones you wrote in task 6. You had read songs and read movies where you're just reading the raw data. By the way, I know I said I wasn't going to do this, but just very briefly, so many students getting errors on reading the songs file. Reading the songs can be in any order. That's true for read movies as well, but my correct solution for read movies does happen to return an array list with the movies in order as they appear in the file. So if you don't do that with the read movies, you do get away with it, but for read songs, you don't. So when you're checking the songs array list, you have to make sure that the array list that's returned has all the songs you expect it to, but in any order. And I'm seeing lots and lots of mistakes on that one where you're not getting an incorrect solution marked as incorrect because you're not checking the whole array list. Or what a lot of students are doing is looping through the expected array list, the expected songs, and then in an inner loop, looping through all of the actual songs and saying, if this song is the song I'm looking for, then check all the things for this song. And the way you're checking, is this the song I'm looking for, is either checking if it's got the right title or it's got the right ID. For the sake of my example, let's say you're checking the title. If it has the title I'm looking for, then check this song. Well, what if the returned array list doesn't contain any songs with that title? Then you're never doing any checks for that song. So you go through your inner loop looking for a song with this title. You don't find one, so you never call compare songs or whatever your helper method is called. You never call that method because you didn't find a song with the right title. So if the incorrect solution has all the titles all messed up, which one of my incorrect solutions does, all the titles, IDs, and artists are just all mixed up. They're in the wrong spots. Then your inner loop is never going to say, oh, I found the song I'm looking for. So you're never actually going to do any checks. You're never going to run any asserts, and your code's going to pass. The incorrect solution is going to pass your test. One way to check for this is stub out your entire read songs method with return new array list. And that's it. Just that return an empty array list, run your test, and make sure your test recognizes that as an incorrect solution. Or return an array list with the right size. If you have a size check somewhere, return an array list of the right size, but with a whole bunch of songs with just empty string for all their values and no ratings. And see if your test passes that one. It probably will. If you're having that issue of the incorrect solutions on task 6. I know nobody asked, but I've been getting that question so wearily often that that I want to mention it. So hopefully I don't have to answer that again. Yeah. Oh, that was your question, office. Oh, but it was probably already answered at this point. So yeah, unfortunately, I already answered it like 10 to 15 times. I feel like, and Gerline's probably answered it a bunch of times too. But hopefully the rest of you with that question, we can get it out there. And I do have, like, there's a lecture that I have where I compare two array lists and I talk about order in array lists. And that is one thing I wasn't able to get to this semester. So I think I have to make sure I get that example in a lecture. But even with that example in last semester, a lot of students still had the same question. So maybe I need a different approach for that one. I think I gotta fix my read movies correct solution to mix up the order to make sure that because you build false confidence when it works for read movies but not for read songs. I think that's where I gotta make a change. I gotta make sure read movies has the same feature where you have to check the movies regardless of order. I think that's part of the solution. Or just scrap that idea altogether and say it's not related to what we're learning in the course. It's not related to learning objective. I don't know. There is a hidden learning objective about testing. Testing is a huge part of the course, so I do like having it in there as testing practice. But anyway, I'm getting off track. So the difference between this read movie ratings, and the other two read methods, is that this one is going to take an array list of movies as an input and the string for a file name for the movie ratings file that we just looked at the data for. So it takes an array list, and the intent is that this array list of movies will be whatever's returned by your read movies method. So when you're reading eventually in media library, where we're populating a media library with all kinds of songs and movies, we're going to take 3 strings, which are the 3 file names, and then call all 3 of your read methods. So you're going to call read songs. That gives you songs with all the ratings in them because it's all in one file. Then you're going to call read movies to get an array list of movies. And you take that array list of movies and feed it into your read movie ratings method to get the ratings added to that array list of movies that you got from read movies. So you're combining read movies and read movie ratings to get one array list of all of the movies that have been rated. And you'll have their title, their cast, and ratings in those movie objects in that array list. And so in your testing, this array list of movies that you feed into that, it shouldn't have any ratings added to them yet. So make sure when you're calling your read movies ratings in your test, make sure that that array list of movies you're feeding it doesn't have any ratings already. The intent is that you give it movies with no ratings, and then this is where you're populating the ratings. There's an important point in here I want to make sure I highlight. If a movie has not been rated, it should be ignored. So if there's a movie, even if it's in the array list of movies as in the parameter, if it has not been rated in this ratings file, if there's no ratings for that movie, that movie should not be in your returned array list. So the returned array list of movies should not contain any movies that have not been rated, even if they're in the input file. And likewise, if a movie's been rated but it's not in the input file, the input array list, if it's been rated but it's not in the input array list, that should also be ignored. So we're only returning movies where we have the title and cast and at least one rating. We have to have both, or else that movie should not be in the output. Wait, I do mention the other side of that, right? We got the any order thing again. So all that stuff from task 6, the songs, making sure you get that. I'm not sure if, I don't recall if my correct solution mixes up the order in this one or not. I don't remember if you get away with cheesing this one or not. Yo, what's up, Jackie? It's been a while. It's been 6 weeks. But the ratings for the movies themselves will appear in the order in which they appear in the file. I always do this in test 6 and 7. I do this because checking the linked list, checking an array list and making sure it has all the right values in any order, that's not too bad. But doing the same thing with a linked list is kind of a pain in the ass. So I just don't make you do that. It'd be a pain. So just populate them as they appear in the file. And we don't have to worry about checking the linked lists in that way, because that's just tedious. I've already tested your understanding of linked lists, and with array list, I'm testing you on this concept of checking if a return data structure has the right values, and they can be in any order. Those are the two things that I'm testing you on. I don't see the need to test them both simultaneously by doing any order in a linked list. It's I just don't see the need for it. You should be able to do that, but it'd just be tedious. All right, and then media library, the other side of this. And by the way, if they're, especially Unknown Mischief, who asked, if there's a specific thing that you want, by the way, make sure you let me know, because I'm just ripping through the whole thing. And then the other kind of half of this assignment, which I did... there is something, I think I have to update my grader on this. I don't think it's entirely fair. But like, there's two halves to this assignment. To get any feedback on the first half, you do have to at least attempt the second half. So if you don't have a media library with the methods, they can be stubbed out, but if the methods have to exist. If media library doesn't exist with all the required methods, then my grading code can't compile because it doesn't see media library, doesn't compile, and then none of my grading stuff can run, and you get error in Autolab. You just get the generic error, couldn't do the thing. So if you're seeing that and you're trying to get feedback on just half of the assignment, at least create these stubbed out methods. They can return null, they can do nothing, but they have to exist just so my code can compile. And then you can get feedback on your first part. So the second part, and maybe the solution to that is just not having these programming tasks with multiple subtasks in them. Maybe that's my solution to that one. And I don't know. I'll think of that's for me to worry about and think about. So the next part is the media library. So this is where we want to get a library of movies and songs, and this is where polymorphism is finally kicking in. Is that we have songs and movies that both extend rateable. So we want to make sure, we want to take it, not make sure, but we want to take advantage of that fact and create this media library that can have songs and movies all mixed in. And the idea is that the media library will be coded for ratables. Since movies and songs are both ratables, the media library is going to work with ratables. It should have an instance variable that's an array list of ratables. I think I put that hint right in here. If not, I spoiled it. That's fine. It should have an array list of ratables as an instance variable that has all of the movies and songs in it. It's going to have a populate library method that takes the 3 file names that we just talked about at length calls the 3 read methods, and then dumps all those songs and movies in that array list of rateables, because an array list of rateables through polymorphism can store songs and movies. This is where we see that power of polymorphism come in. We can have this this media library that handles 2 different types, but just treats them as the same thing. And then the top K rateables is giving you the top K rateables. So top K, where K can be any integer. So for example, if you call top K rateables of 10, that's giving you a top 10 list. Top K rateables of 3, that's going to give you a top 3 list. And then making sure that those rateables are what you expect them to be. So the only way to test this stuff is to test them all together. You test this all in one go. There's no intermediate testing with this. You can't test populate library without calling top K rateables. You have to test them together. It's the only way to do it. Because of what's defined here, I didn't say your media library should have a get library method that returns an array list of rateables. I didn't say that in here. So you can't call populate library and then make sure that the things you expect to be in there are actually in there, because there's no method defined in the homework doc. If you do write a test for that, you're going to get errors in Autolab, because your tests don't compile or run against my code, and you're going to fail in a correct solution, and you're going to get like method doesn't exist as your error, because that method doesn't exist in my correct solution, whatever method you wrote to check the library. So to test this, you create a new media library. You're going to call populate libraries with 3 files, ideally 3 test files, very small files that you created. I still see some students testing with the full data sets. That's not the intent. The intent is that you take the full data set, trim it down to a few lines, somewhere between like 1 and 10, I'd say is a pretty good range. And ideally multiples. Like I always like to start with a test with a file with just one single line, like we did in lecture when we talked about this. Is start with a file with one single line. Then I move to 2 lines, and then 3 lines where 2 of the lines refer to the same song or movie. And then I like to have one more test case with like 8 to 10, somewhere in that range, number of lines. So you'll create your test files. Don't test with the entire file though, because how do you write your asserts? You're gonna write 100,000 asserts. That's insane. That's insanity. Or are you going to build your actual array list with manually writing 100,000 things? It's just super tedious. So we trim down the files to smaller test files to make our lives easier, so we're not doing really ridiculous monotonous work in our testing. So you create 3 test files, call populate library with those 3 files, call top K rateables, and then check if the top K rateables are the rateables that you expect based on the Bayesian average of all of the media that you gave it, all the rateables that you gave it. I've never thought about this, but instead of rateables, why don't I call it media? If I'm calling it media library, I'm not calling it rateable library. Like every case of rateable, I should change to media. I think that'd make a little more sense. By their Bayesian average with the usual 2 extra ratings of 3. I like to stick with that as my standard for Bayesian averages. So you're going to create a new media library, call populate library with your test files, and you're going to build your test files in a way that you're going to know the Bayesian average of every song and every movie. Call your top K with whatever value for K you want. And then make sure that the songs and the rateables are returned in the order in which you expect based on decreasing Bayesian average. So the very first at index 0 here, that should be the best piece of media. That should be the highest rating piece of media, highest rated by Bayesian average. Grab that one or check, make sure that one's that one, the one that you expect. Make sure the second one's the one you expect, etc. Make sure that the returned array list has the right size. It should have size equal to K. If it doesn't have size equal to K, something went wrong. You can reject that one right away. And it's in one of these hints. My eyes are bugging out a little bit right here. And don't write any tests where two songs or movies have the same Bayesian average rating. You can do this if you want, but it's creating ambiguity. It's creating multiple correct solutions. So if I have two songs that are tied for number one, the returned array list having those in either order, they're both going to be correct, which means your testing gets a little more complex because you have to accept either one of the correct solutions because there's multiple correct solutions. If you have like a three-way tie, or if you have two three-way ties, the combination of correct solutions just blows up astronomically. You have to write some custom code to take care of that. And we're already doing that. I'm already testing your ability to do that with the songs, the read songs that can be in any order. I don't feel the need to hit you with that one again. So keep it simple. Just avoid any two pieces of media with exactly the same Bayesian average. You can create the CSV from IntelliJ. I do, so like we use the cities.csv in lecture. I would copy it, paste it, give it a new name. And then delete. And there's my test file. There's one of my test files. All in IntelliJ. I would recommend not opening it in a spreadsheet, especially if you're on a Windows machine. They have a tendency to mess with your files without telling you, especially the line breaks. They'll change the line break characters sometimes and just completely destroy everything. So I'd recommend not doing that. Just do it in IntelliJ. Okay, I think that's everything I have to say about Task 7 testing. And then writing the methods. I don't have anything to say ever about implementing the methods. Just, you have the full description of all the methods. Make them work. Make them pass your tests. Okay. Any other specific questions? I'd much prefer to take your specific questions. I want to know that I'm, at least for one of you, that I'm helping you with something that you're actually struggling with. Aside from just guessing, because what I plan on going through by default is, it's possible that none of you, like, it won't help anyone. I don't think so, but it definitely won't help anyone directly on your homework. So if I have a direct homework question, I know I can address your problem head on, where these are going to be indirect, because I'm not going to be talking about any specific homework task. So if you have specific questions, I'd prefer them. Let me look through these. I didn't pick out which one of these examples I actually want to. Last semester I started with example 1 and it just drags on forever. And at this point in the semester, you've all learned the lessons that I'm showing you in that one. This one I want to start with, though. I think this one I'll do. I think you've all learned this lesson too, but is there one that's... That one we went over earlier in the semester. Actually jumped ahead to get that one. This one's fun, but it's only fun for if you're really tracking. I'll just give the spoilers on this one. This line right here, when you're... Oh, and I spelled receipt wrong. And this line right here, I'm trying to print out the a line on a receipt for an item that's being purchased. So I'm going to print the description of the item, or take that as a string. This is a string. I'm going to concatenate that with colon space $sign. So I got the description of the item, colon, and then the price in dollars. So I'm going to concatenate the price, and then I'm going to compute the tax, which is going to be the price multiplied by the tax rate, and rounding to 2 decimals for what it's worth in kind of a janky way, because I always forget what the... Oh, actually, I'm using round right here. I always forget what the method to round to a certain number of decimal places is, so sometimes I just do it this janky way. It works. and then adding the price and the tax, and then printing the price plus the tax, so the total price of this item to the screen. Understand completely on test 7? Yes! That's what I'm talking about. So when we run this line of code, what actually happens here, so what I want is the total price including tax printed on the receipt. That doesn't happen here. What actually happens is we get the description that's a string. We're going to concatenate the formatting here as a string, and let me collapse this. So it should print like if eggs are $3 with a tax of 5%, this is what I want printed to the screen, eggs $3.15. That should be on your receipt. Just like whenever you go to a store, you got your receipt and it says, here's the item you bought, here's how much it cost you. Now on your actual receipt, the tax would be separate, so it's a little different, but I had to do it to set up what I wanted to talk about. The description, we're going to concatenate our symbols here, and then we're going to concatenate the price. So we would concatenate, what we would actually get here is we're going to get eggs, colon, space, $sign. Then we're going to concatenate the price. And then this, since this is resolving to a string, this expression resolves to a string, we have a string plus a double. And that string is going to say, whoa, this is string concatenation. And then we're going to get 0.15. So this is what's actually going to be printed to the screen. If I print this on a receipt, this is what you're going to get on your receipt, which is certainly not what you want. So being careful with this overloaded plus operator, because it can mean, here we're trying to mean addition to add these two things, but we're actually going to get is string concatenation. This bit me in the ass one time. I was working on a large project, and that got me one time. So I like to get it in examples, even if we don't talk about it too much. Parentheses are going to solve that. Now I have a double plus a double resolved first, and then it'll be string concatenation here. But being careful with your overloaded operators, making sure you're getting the right operator that you expect, is a really, really sneaky bug. But I don't want to go through that one. Binary search, oh, that's not really going to help us. Not really going to help us today. I didn't really ask you to do much recursion this semester, just the tree, building a linked list from a tree, and the recommendation to use more recursion than that, which so many of you ignore. When you struggle with that, building the linked list from a tree, and then I say, in office hours, I'll say, well, did you use recursion on task 3 when I recommended recursion to get practice for this one? No, I used loops. Well, that's why this one's so hard. That assignment is meant to build you up to that one. If the first time you're doing recursion is building a linked list from a tree, that's a very difficult recursive method to write if it's your very first one. This one was meant to get you more practice with recursion, but I didn't really ask you to do much, so that wouldn't be super valuable. And trees, I think most of you are beyond trees at this point, right? Test 5. Maybe. I guess both of those are to help you with task 5. I'm guessing that most of you who are actually here live are past that. So let's talk about this one. How much do I have? And I purposely didn't, I know this is going to sound like a lie, but I purposely didn't take a look at all this beforehand. So I actually wrote this code. So we got a location object. We have country population, which is going to return the population of a specific country, given a file name of that country's data that we actually just looked at with this cities.csv. It's country code, name of the city, the region code, the population, latitude, longitude. So we have data in this format, and given a file name of a file in that format and a country code, we want to find the population of the total population of that country, summing up the population of all the cities in that country. And then our load countries file is a helper method. We're going to call to read the file and parse all of the data. And a city object, which doesn't really do anything. It's just a container for these 5 values, for the values from the file, where location is an object. Last time when I showed this this data and wrote some code for it, I did 2 doubles for the location. Here I'm doing location as a separate object. Either way is fine, but it's just the different ways of approaching it. Having it as a location object is handy because then you can write a method like public double distance from another location. So it's nice to have, you know, that ability to write some extra methods, get some extra behavior of the location class. Should I write the whole thing? I don't. We're getting sidetracked here, but square root of no, I'm getting sidetracked. But the square root of the sum of the squares of the differences, etc. But you can write extra methods, extra helper methods if you have this in a separate class. If it's 2 doubles in your city, it's really hard to write those extra methods. So this is my preferred way of setting it up. But I'll set it up with 2 doubles for lecture examples if I know I'm just going to throw away that code and move on. But this is a preferred way to set that up, since that lat long is representing a location. And actually, I can't even do distance. This is lat and long. You have to do the greater circle distance method, which I do like to use as a homework assignment. I haven't run it in a bit, but it's not just square root of the sum of the differences of the squares of the differences. It's not that Euclidean distance. But anyway, and then we have a whole bunch of testing code. Which is... Oh, because they're hash maps. I was going to say, this is what you had to do on your homework, but it was testing hash maps. And then I have some testing files. So this, I like to start with a single line, so just Buffalo, New York. And then my next testing file, I have multiple lines where at least 2 of the lines are related to the same country. So we have 3 cities in the same country and then 1 city in a different country, just to make sure a lot of things this is testing. 1, can my code handle, or the incorrect solutions, can they handle a country with multiple cities? And can they handle a city that's not in the country that's being asked for? So an incorrect solution might just treat every single city as being in the same country, or it might only read 1 city. Maybe it always overwrites the population with the latest city in that country that it reads. There are a lot of things that this is, a lot of bugs that this pretty simple test case is going to get rid of. And then I'd like to have city test 3 if I'm actually testing this code for production. I would have like cities test 3 that's going to have, you know, 8 to 10 lines at least and be a much bigger test. Okay, so finally, and those are my test files. And I'm going through my testing by building my expected, getting my actual, and then calling my helper method, which is going to check absolutely everything. This is something I see this a lot on Piazza and in office hours. When you're writing a test case, you need to check absolutely everything. Make sure that the actual returned data structure has everything that you expect it to have. Not just check a few things, not just check its size, not just check if the song titles are there without checking their ratings. You should check absolutely everything. So I'm going through, very first thing, always check the size. Even those of you who had the issue with the linked lists getting the null pointer exceptions, like if you just had a simple size check, we give you the size method. It's in the linked list node class. It's given to you. All you had to do is have this line, and you would have just got through that without ever seeing a null pointer exception, because the returned list wasn't the right size. This assert would fail, and you wouldn't have to check anything else. You would never get anything else. What's up, Tariq? Hopefully I pronounced that right. And the method was given to you. I don't know. Like every time I talk about testing data structures, I say the first thing you should do is check the size. And I don't know. It's frustrating to see see that so many null pointer exceptions that could have been avoided by the one line that I always tell you to add. But it is what it is. So make sure they're the right size. So make sure that we have the right number of elements. And then for each key in my expected hash map, where these are, this is testing the read files, the reading the file method. So making sure that it just returns all of the countries with all of the cities that I expect. Going through all of the countries that I expect, and then making sure that it exists in what was returned. So that has to have the country that I'm expecting, every country that I'm expecting, since I'm looping through them all. And I'm asserting that. This is one check that a lot of you missed on the songs, the read songs testing. Making sure that that song actually is in the array list that's returned. That check needs to be there somewhere. Where if you're just checking, okay, when I find the song, like I explained earlier, when I find the song, then compare the song, make sure it has all the right values. But if that song's not in there at all, make sure the song's actually in there. Make sure the country's actually in here in this case. If the country exists, then get both array lists that I'm expecting. Make sure they're the same size. I have a new data structure that I'm testing. Make sure they're the right size. If they ain't the right size, the actual is wrong. Get it out of there right away. It's wrong. Doesn't even have the right number of things. It's wrong. Then go through my expected cities and actual cities simultaneously. So this one, I'm saying that the cities have to appear in the order in which they appear in the file. So if I go through the indices, these should be the same cities. And then, call on my getters and make sure everything's good. Always using my tolerance or epsilon when comparing doubles. Making sure we're comparing strings, not with equal. Here I'm using assert equals, which is going to call dot equals. So I'm good on my strings. I'm good on my doubles. This is an int, so I could use equal here, but I'm using assert equals anyway. And that's going to check everything. Make sure they're the right size. Make sure every key, and keys have to be unique. So this is going to go through and make sure I have every key in the actual. That means I have every country. I'm asserting that I have every country I expect. And for each country, I'm going to make sure I have every city that I expect and checking every value in the city. I'm checking absolutely everything. If anything's off at all, this is going to test. This is going to check it and mark it as incorrect. And finally, we have a test for the country population. So getting the population of Fiji that, I'm sorry I forget my country codes, but the country with 3 cities in that test file. Actually this is the full cities.csv. So in this full city, this full data set, this is one case where we can use the full data set because I don't have to hard code all of the data. So we have 3 cities in the full data. So if we sum up these values, we should get that quad 8 that we're expecting in the test file. Okay, so finally circling back to, now that I explained everything that's going on, circling back to what I said, seems like forever ago now, that I purposely don't look at these and prepare, I purposely didn't prepare this for the lecture, because I wrote all this code, but I wrote it with intentional bugs. So when we run these tests, if all goes well, they should fail. God, I hope they fail. Okay. So all 3 of those tests that we just looked through, they all fail. My actual was 0 instead of quad 8s. My size of my hash map was wrong. I got 4 instead of 2. And test single did not contain one of the keys that I expected. So we got all kinds of errors here. So I purposely didn't prepare because since I wrote the code, I knew at one point in time what all the bugs were. My memory will get jogged and it'll probably come back to me too quick. But what I want to do is give you as authentic as I can of a debugging experience of how I approach code that's broken. So I have these tests that are failing and I want to figure out what's going on wrong with these. How do I approach that problem? So I don't remember what the bugs are right now. Once I look through the code, I'll probably be like, oh yeah, I did that. But hopefully I get confused and you actually get to see me debug code live. So let's do that. We got 10 minutes. I'm sure I can get these bugs. Well, I don't know. We'll see. So let's start with test single city. This is where it really helps to have a very simple test file. I have one single line of data. 2 lines total. Yeah, I got a header line there that has to be there. But one single line of data, and that's failing. That's failing. That means my code's completely bonkers broken. So it's good to have that simple test case to get the obvious bugs out of the way. So let's start with this one. I'm going to rerun it just to get the other ones out of the way. And what I'll do, so I'm expecting an array list with one city, a hash map with one city that's going to have a country code of US, that's going to have an array list, one country with one city. I keep feeling like I said that wrong. US is going to have one city, just Buffalo, New York, US, population, latitude, longitude, all this data. So that's what I'm expecting. Let's set a breakpoint right at the beginning of the load countries, because we know load countries is not giving us the data that we expect. And I'm going to run this in the debugger. So I'm going to run this in the debugger and try to figure out what's going wrong with this. Actually, before we even do that, I like to see what's actually being returned. So if I click step over, that skips over my entire method, or I can move the breakpoint. And I want to see what's actually returned. It's going to be a hash map with a key of Buffalo and a value of US, New York, Buffalo, with that population, latitude, longitude. So it's doing something, but it looks like it's doing it pretty jacked up. The keys here should be country codes, but it's actually a city. So let's try to figure out why this is messed up. Now I'm past my breakpoint where I want to be. You can't go backwards in the debugger, so I'm going to hit the restart button. That's going to restart the whole process and then stop at my breakpoint. Then I'm going to step into my method and try to figure out what's going on here. So first, all right, we got the right file name. The file's here. It has the data I expect. Cool. Let's step forward. We're creating an empty hash map. We got a hash map of size 0. We got at 1188. We got a 4-digit number. Special time. And then we're going to call read file, our helper method. Our helper method. This one just literally reads the file. I'm actually going to skip over that one. This is cut and paste from a previous lecture. This code is withstood the test of time. We're pretty sure that one's right. So I'm going to do skip over. I don't feel like clicking through those lines. And then lines.remove 0. So let's look at the lines. We have the header line and my first city. And lines.remove 0 looks like what I'm doing here is removing that header line. So now my lines don't have the header line anymore. That looks like it's working exactly as it should. And then I'm going to start iterating through the lines. So I'm going to iterate through the lines. Me realizing this doesn't have one of the bugs that I wanted to talk about. But we're going to iterate through the lines. We're going to split on commas. So once we split this line, so this is the one line that we're going to iterate over. We're splitting this line on commas. I'm going to skip over all that. Those are all internal to Java. I don't know why the debugger wants me to go into them. I'm going to get my splits, which looks US, Buffalo, New York, the population, latitude, longitude. So that's looking good at these indices. And then the country is going to be splits of 0. Cool. So the country, splits of 0. Country is US. Name, splits of 1. Buffalo. Region, splits of 2. New York. I don't want to go into parse-int. I should have explained. I'll do the same thing on the next one so I can explain. But population, got the value I want as an int. So if you get stuck in Java code, I know I mentioned this before, but I like repeating it's easy to miss a point that goes by so quick in lecture. But if you get stuck in Java code like this, there's a step out, which is going to run until the current stack frame ends. So it'll take me right back to the country population stack frame, which is where I want to be. I'm going to click step over so I don't get stuck in Java code again. I'm going to create a new location. I'm going to step over that and just kind of make sure that it did what I expected to do, because I am remembering what the bug is and I know it's not in there. So unfortunately I am cheating a little bit here. But I got all the information where I want it to be. Make sure location got latitude and longitude in the right spots. Looks like it did. Everything's looking good. And then I have my city constructor, and there's really not much else going on here. I'm going to do my lazy initialization and then add the city to the country that I expect. So really the only thing left is this city constructor. I'm going to take the country, region, name, population, location. Cool. So this dot name equals name. This dot region equals region, country, population, location. And then if I look at this, so this is the object that's being created, a reference to the object that's being created, I can start seeing the mistake here. So this dot name is US, but that's the country code. Region is New York, that's fine, but the country is Buffalo. Population looks good, location looks good, but it looks like my name and country are reversed. That's bad, but my constructor looks fine. Country is going to country, region's going to region, name's going to name. So what went wrong here? And this is a very common mistake, which is why I made this example. Very common mistake. I didn't see it too much this semester for what it's worth. But this is a common mistake of having your parameters and arguments not agreeing with each other. So city, the first parameter is country, but I'm giving it name. And especially when you have 3 strings here, like the city example, which is meant to mirror a song. Song has 3 strings in its constructor. It's very easy to get them mixed up and get them in the wrong order. And when you're testing, you're going to use that wrong order. And then when you submit to Autolab, you get wrong on a correct solution because my constructor has them in the right order. So we want to fix this by switching this order of our arguments. We're calling our arguments in the wrong order, which is something that doesn't jump out immediately. That's kind of hard to see until you run this in the debugger. It's hard to see when you make that mistake. And then our lazy initialization and adding the city, those look fine. So what I'm going to do is stop the debugger and run my test again without the debugger and make sure that I am passing this test, and I'm not. Okay, so city, country, name. Here we do get a little authentic debugging because I expected that to work. Country, region, name. Okay. I got the wrong order. Country, region. No, I don't. Country, region, name. We made sure that these were the right order. Those were. Maybe I just have to run it again. Okay, get country and actual country. These are. So let me put the debugger. So you actually do get an authentic experience because that code looked fine to me. So let's run the debugger. I'm going to set my breakpoint right here just so I can manually compare expected and actual. First thing I like to do when I'm debugging is take a look at my actual versus expected. Make sure they're the right, they have the right things. So expected, name US, actual name Buffalo region. So my actual is looking right at this point. My issue is with my expected. So this is a pretty tricky one. That's fun. I'm glad that came up naturally. So when I'm creating my new city here, since I changed the parameters in my country population method, I changed my argument order to match the parameter order of my city, but the parameter order of my city isn't agreeing with the order in my expected. So I have the wrong order in my expected as well. So I want to go to either go to my, I'm going to do it right here. I didn't realize how late it was. That's my alarm going off for lecture. So I'm going to fix it here, go to my country population, reverse these again, and now get those agreeing with each other so that I'm using the right parameters, getting my parameters, and wherever I use the arguments, getting everything synced up so that they all agree with each other. And then at this point, let me try to run all the tests. I know I have some other broken code. Oh, was that the only mistake I put in there? I built this whole thing for that one bug. Well, whatever, it gets us done at the end of lecture. But the whole example for one little bug, just parameter order. But hopefully seeing extra debugging, seeing more debugger work helped some of you. All right, yeah, that's the end of lecture. That's the end of the last lecture, ain't it? So I'll still have office hours at 2 today, 2 to 3. Office hours, I'll still have them Thursday 2 to 3, and then the office hour marathon Friday 11 to 3. It's been a fun semester. It's been a very, very quick semester. Holy crap, 6 weeks goes by so fast. And hopefully, we'll spend the rest of the week getting everybody across the finish line. Hopefully we'll get you, especially all of you who are still trying and attending lecture, hopefully we'll get at least all of you across the finish line. And then others who don't really watch lecture, it is what it is. We'll see what we can do with them. Hopefully a lot of them do get there too. As long as they're watching it. By the way, if you're watching the lecture, as long as you watch lecture day of, that's perfectly fine. But I don't mean to say live, but if you're not watching it day of, I don't know how you can do that in a 6-week course and expect to pass. Or watching it at 2 times speed, or all the ridiculous stuff students do. But it's been fun. A fun, fast time. Maybe I'll see some of you around campus. And enjoy the rest of your summer. Peace.